My husband left me after I tested HIV positive. He called me a cheat, but I never was. You're welcome to my channel. Please be strong-hearted for this story. Let's dive in. You can believe me or not, but I swear on everything I hold dear, I never cheated on my husband. Not even once. I was married for 8 years. We weren't perfect, but we were a team. 2 boys, a small but happy home. I thought we were in together, ride or die, 5 years after my second son, I started getting sick too often. First, it was constant cold, then the fatigue that couldn't let up. I thought maybe it was stress or anemia. I was a full-time mom, barely sleeping, but it got worse. Body pains, strange fever, weight loss, something wasn't right. I went to the hospital, they ran tests. The doctor walked in, he looked different, not like someone bringing news, more like someone about to deliver a death sentence. He said, "You are HIV positive, ma'am." I swear, I sat there frozen. I didn't even cry. I just kept blinking, waiting for him to correct himself, of course. I said, "No, that's not right. No, test me again." He did. Same results. The room started spinning. All I could think was, my husband. I have to tell him. Maybe we both had it. Maybe something happened. I needed answers. I got home, waited for him to sit down, and I told him everything. Shaking, crying, praying for him to hold my hand and tell me we would figure it out. Instead, he stood up slowly, stared at me like I was a stranger, like I was a shit, and said the words I will never forget. "So you've been cheating on me all this while?" I felt something inside me crack. I begged. I explained. I told him I have never been with another man, that I love him, that I will never do that to him. But it didn't matter. He packed a bag that same night and left. No goodbye to the kids, no second thought. The next day, he was gone. And just like that, so was my reputation. People talked, family judged. Everyone assumed I was just another woman who couldn't keep her legs closed. But deep down, I knew I hadn't done anything wrong. I knew this wasn't infidelity, and I was going to find out the truth. Because when I got my sons tested, my first child was negative. But my second son, the one I had 5 years ago, he was positive. And that changed everything. I barely slept that night. My baby, my innocent sweet boy, was HIV positive. I held him while he slept, and I broke. Not just because of the diagnosis, but because I knew now, with absolute sanity, that whatever happened to me didn't start with me. If he was positive too, that meant I already had the virus before I gave birth to him. But here is the thing. I went through all the standard antenatal care when I was pregnant with him. I did every test they told me to, and they had always checked for HIV. If I had it back then, they would have told me, right? Unless something went terribly wrong during delivery. So I started thinking back to that day, 5 years ago. I wasn't in a fancy hospital. Money was tight, so we went to a small local clinic. I remember being in labor, the pain almost unbearable, and the place was chaotic that day. 2 of us were giving birth at the same time, and there was only one nurse on duty. She was rushing between both beds, sweating, overwhelmed. There wasn't even time to clean up properly between patients. I was in so much pain, I couldn't even tell what was happening around me. I just wanted to survive it. I didn't know it then, but the other woman giving birth that day must be HIV positive. And the nurse, should I say God bless her, but also damn her, didn't take any precautions. No gloves, no separate equipment, nothing. That's how it happened. That's how the virus passed from one woman's blood into mine. Through carelessness, through a system that failed me, through a moment I didn't even see coming. I was infected on that day I gave birth, and so was my son. You know the worst part? Even after the hospital mistake started to make sense, no one believed me. Not my husband, not my family, not even his family. To them, I was just a woman who got caught cheating and was now desperately looking for someone else to blame. Why can't you accept what you did? My sister-in-law hissed at me one day. You brought shame to this family. Now, you want to blame a hospital. I wasn't even angry. I was numb. Because deep down, I thought maybe someone, just one person, would say, wait, she has never given us a reason not to trust her. Let's hear her out. But no one did. I started gathering everything I could remember from that day. The date, the time, the clinic's name, the name of the nurse who delivered me. Nurse Amaka. Yes, she was the only one on duty that day. And it took weeks of going back and forth, asking questions, making calls, pretending to be someone else just to get any info until I found out who the other woman was. And I was right. She was HIV positive. I didn't know whether to cry or scream. When I heard it, that woman delivered her baby just minutes before me. With the same unwashed hand, Nurse Amaka handled me, cut me, stitched me, helped me bring life into this world, and unknowingly handed me and my son a death sentence. Still, when I told my husband, he laughed in disbelief. You are making this up now, he said. Just stop lying. It was like bleeding from a wound nobody could see. I was hurting, but everyone acted like it wasn't real, like I was just being dramatic. But I refused to back down. If no one would believe me, I would get proof. I didn't care how long it took or how painful it was. I was going to prove that I wasn't a cheat. I was going to fight for my name and for my son, even if I had to do it alone. It was a friend from the church who finally said, you need to speak to someone in human rights. I was already broken, tired, emotionally drained, but something about her voice, so firm, so certain, sparked something into me. Maybe, just maybe, I wasn't crazy for wanting justice, so I made the call. They listened. They didn't interrupt. They didn't dismiss me. They didn't ask, are you sure you didn't cheat? They listened. For the first time in a long while, someone believed me. The woman on the phone asked for every detail. She helped me to document everything. I went back to the clinic, not once, not twice, pretending I needed my son's birth record. I recorded conversations. I took pictures. I got testimonies from 2 women who also gave birth around that time. One of them even mentioned how the nurse looked overwhelmed that day. Bit by bit, the puzzle came together. And when human rights got involved, everything exploded. They launched a quiet investigation into the clinic. Turns out it wasn't the first time someone had reported negligence. They're unsterilized too. One nurse doing everything, no gloves sometimes. They were just too poor, too afraid, or too tired to pursue it. But not me, not anymore. With the help of my lawyer and the human rights, I filed a lawsuit against the clinic, against the nurse, against the system that let this happen. My husband's jaw dropped when the news reached him. Suddenly, the cheater he threw away was the same woman making headlines. And guess what? The women who gave birth before me, the one who was HIV positive, came forward too. The testimony sealed everything. The court ruled in my favor. The clinic was shut down permanently. Nurse Amaka lost her license. I got a settlement, but honestly, it wasn't about the money. It was about my name, my dignity, my truth. And I finally had it back. But the virus was still with me and in my little boy. No amount of justice could reverse that. Now, it was about learning to live again. The day the court ruling came in my favor, I thought I would feel whole again. I thought I would laugh, cry, maybe collapse from the weight that had finally been lifted off my shoulder. But I didn't. I just sat on my bed holding my son. He was asleep, his little chest rising and falling with peace I hadn't felt in a long time. Winning the case didn't cure the virus, it didn't erase the whispers, it didn't bring back my husband, but it gave me something I hadn't had in years: peace of mind. I finally knew what happened to me. I finally knew I hadn't imagined it. I finally knew I wasn't a liar. But now I had to face the new version of me. A single mother living with HIV, raising a child who had to take medication just to stay alive. It was crushing. There was days I couldn't get out of the bed. Days I stared at my son and cried silently into his calls. Days I thought of what could have been. What should I have been if only that nurse had done her job? But I kept moving, slowly, one pill at a time, one blood test at a time, one therapy section at a time. I found a support group for women living with HIV. We laughed, we cried, we shared stories that felt too heavy to carry alone. And I started talking, not just in the group, but in real life, in churches, in women's forum, and at natal clinics. I told my story again and again and again. And every time I did, I saw the same look on women's face: shock, horror, disbelief, and then gratitude. Because they didn't know that these things could happen. Because nobody talks about these things. Because sometimes the places we go to feel safe are the ones that will wound us the deepest. I still miss the man I married. I still miss the family I thought I had. But I don't miss the woman who stayed quiet, who let herself be blamed, who doubted herself. She's gone. Now there is just me, stronger, wiser, still healing, but not broken anymore. It has been over a year since the court ruled in my favor, since the hospital was shut down, since the world finally heard my side of the story. One evening, I was washing my son's clothes when my phone rang. I didn't recognize the number. I picked up, and just like that, his voice spilled into my ears. My husband, the man who left me when I needed him the most, the man who looked into my eyes and called me a cheat, the man who disappeared without second thought for the child we made together. I froze, my hands trembled, my heart raced. Hello? His voice cracked like it was roasted from silence. I heard what happened. I'm so sorry. Sorry. He went on to explain how someone had forwarded him a video of one of my speaking sections, how he watched the whole thing in tears, how he felt like the ground swallowed him when he realized the truth, that I had been innocent all along. I didn't say a word. I've been a coward, he said. I let you to fight alone. I should have believed you. I'm not asking for anything, just a chance to make things right, even if it's just to be in our son's life. It hurts to hear him say our son. It burned me because we never our to him when it mattered. I told him I would think about it, not because I wanted him back, but because my son deserved the truth from both sides. We met days later in a small cafe. He looked thinner, older, guilty. He held my hand. I put it away. He cried. I didn't. He apologized. I listened. But in that moment, I realized something deep and unshakable. Forgiveness doesn't always mean reconciliation, right? I had forgiven him, but I will never forget that in my darkest hour, he handed me the match instead of the light. So I gave him what he asked for, unlimited visitation with his son. But me, I was done. Done with needing his approval, done with seeking closure, done with letting people write my story for me. I never thought I would see the day when I could breathe again. After everything the hospital had put me through, after losing my marriage and almost my sanity, I thought the worst was over. But sometimes, the worst is just the beginning. I spent the next year living, not thriving, not even nearly surviving, just getting through one day to the next, one medicine dose at a time, one sleepless night, with my son nestled next to me. He had his own battles to fight, but we fought it together, and I was getting stronger, even though the world around me seemed to be falling apart. Then I started speaking out. At first, it was just for my own healing. I talked to small groups, shared my story in support meetings. Slowly, word spread. Women started reaching out to me. They too had faced the impossible. They too had been lied to, abandoned, forced to keep secrets that nearly broke them. And I realized something that shifted the entire weight of my existence. I wasn't alone. So I started speaking louder. I made videos. I wrote blog posts. I even began organizing workshops for women in the same shoes I had been in. I didn't want anyone else to suffer silently, not like I did. I used my pain to make something real, something that mattered, something bigger than my story. And as the word came out of my mouth, words that I had kept buried for so long, I realized I wasn't just fighting for others anymore. I was fighting for me. I was healing. One day, I stood in front of a crowd, eyes glued to me as I shared the deepest part of my heart. A woman came up to me after. She said, "You are an inspiration." She showed me that even the world works out, there is still hope. Thank you. I never imagined those words would feel sweet. I didn't need my husband's apology anymore. I didn't need his validation. What I needed was to love myself, to reclaim the life I lost, not by holding on to a past that had already broken me, but by walking forward, by taking the lessons, the strength, and the words from everything I had been through and turning it into something beautiful. I never forgot the day my life changed, the day I realized that sometimes the worst things can lead to the best part of us. My journey wasn't easy. It still isn't. But I'm here. I'm alive. And that is all I need. And with this, I urge you to be careful out there. Women, please be mindful of the places you visit for deliveries. Most hospitals doesn't deserve us. Let's take our health serious.